All right, buddy. We are live on the East Wind Fishing Podcast. I got Scott Adams with me today. Just go ahead and give me a little background. You know, where you fish and your fishing background.
Wow. So my fishing background is pretty much my entire life. So as a kid, that's all I wanted to do all the time. I drove my parents crazy, probably taking me out to little creeks and ponds and everywhere in this county, in Cecil County. I grew up here. Lived here most of my life, except when I went away to college. But so, growing up fishing, that was it. I fished anytime I could, anything I could fish for. And most of my background was small, freshwater, farm ponds, from panfish to bass to trout, trout streams, put and take trout. And didn't get into the saltwater thing until much later, actually. Probably
by saltwater, do you mean like the trips you take, like?
No, I mean I mean not just salt. When I say salt, I mean tidal fishing. So tidal water fishing. Didn't do like river fishing or bay or flats or anything like that until much later in my early 20s probably is before I really got into that kind of fishing. Didn't even know it existed. I was very into bass fishing and farm pond fishing and all that other kind of fishing, and didn't even know that other world was out there.
Do you still mess with the farm ponds at all?
No.
See, I just started because I started this channel for videos really, and then I'm sitting on the couch one day and I'm like, I might as well just do a podcast with it, kind of intertwine everything, get new people. And I mean, I fish with you. I know you. I'm not using this to fish with you.
Right.
More or less just kind of pick your brain because you've grew up here for. You grew up in Cecil County, and right. I know you're a wealth of knowledge here. But yeah, I just got back into farm. I got from growing up in Hartford County, I got a bunch of buddies with ponds, and
oh yeah,
over the last couple of weeks, the spawn's not there yet. From what I remember, I thought the spawn happened in March. For bass, like when they started bedding, but I didn't see anything last weekend.
Really, I think you're right. I think it is March, April. Early April. You didn't see any beds or anything?
No. So when I went to the Eastern Shore a couple weeks ago, I saw some beds there. I went down to a place called Idlewild, which I probably shouldn't have mentioned because I'd like to keep that a secret. I mean, really cool place, ton of ponds and everything. And not all the ponds were spawning. It was a couple that I went up to, and when they're spawning, you walk up to the edge of the pond and you have a 4-pound bass staring you in the face. And it's not afraid of you. It's not going anywhere. I mean, you know this. You sit there and you got your rooster tail and you're trying to piss it off, and sometimes they'll bite, sometimes they don't. And you mentioned trout fishing too. Do they stock anywhere in Cecil County for trout?
Oh yeah,
they do.
There's plenty of. So on the website, on the DNR website, they'll list all the put and take trout streams. Elk Creek's a big one. Principio Creek.
Is that Elk Creek?
It runs all the way through Cecil. Fair Hill is the big area where a lot of people go.
Gotcha.
That bridge right there on 273 at Fair Hill. It's a big put and take area.
The last time I checked, I thought it was just like they did like a pond or two and they put like 500 trout. They
stock all. They
stock it.
And there's rules. You got to stay in touch with that because they don't allow you to fish. I believe it's they stock, and you can't fish a week after the stock.
Yeah.
Once they stock, and then it opens up, and then trout season opens. So, I just tell, I don't follow it anymore. My whole mindset went from, and I don't knock that. I still would occasionally, and even later on when I was trout fishing, I never fished that first day, even that first week.
Well, it's because you're like this.
There's 1,000 people out there crossing lines
shoulder to shoulder.
And all that stuff, and I just don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So I would wait until later, even way late in the season, the fish that were still there and go down and catch fish then.
Yeah.
So and it's still fun. I love so I think growing up, one of my big memories and a fishing, how I loved to fish was the Octorara Creek, and we would just wade the Octorara Creek without waders with shorts and old tennis shoes.
You don't need waders if it's warm enough.
No, as kids, and we would catch all kinds of fish in there, smallies and yellow perch and occasional little stripers and walleye.
Is there still smallies in there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because I keep hearing about Octorara. The guy that was on my first podcast, Sean, he keeps trying to get me to go over there, and there's a swimming hole under the Dr. Jack Bridge.
Okay.
Where we go under there and just whatever, you lay in the water and chill on a summer day when the flats are 90 degrees, too hot to swim, and you just see guys, one after another walking down the creek. And Another fish he said that was in there, which I don't know if it's any different than a largemouth bass, is a red eye bass. Is that
Yeah.
any different, or is that just like
Yeah, it's different. A rock
Yeah.
bass,
Yeah.
red eye, they
'cause
call them. Yeah.
I caught my first red eye bass out of a farm pond last weekend, and I pulled it out, and I was like, the eyes look really red, like like almost like they're bleeding. And he's like, yeah, it's a red eye
Yeah,
bass.
yeah, they're smaller. Kind of, it looks almost like a cross between. I think they look more like a smallmouth, but than a largemouth. But yeah, they're distinctive. When you
Yeah.
catch one, you'll see them. I don't know. I think one day I counted up the species we caught when we were wading the creek. It was like 11 different species one day.
Yeah,
In there. So there's so many different fish that come through the creek, and you can catch really nice smallmouth. Again, April, time when they're spawning and they push up. I mean, I've caught 3-pound smallmouth in the Octorara Creek before.
Really?
So
yeah. So I grew up in Harford County, Forest Hill, Bel Air area, and my earliest memory is doing the same stuff you're talking about, trout fishing with my dad, or going out in Rock State Park. But even Deer Creek and Rock State Park it's totally different now than what it was. We would go there and slam smallmouth all day. We'd make a whole day of it. We'd go out in the morning, catch little helgermites and crayfish, and that was more fun to me than the fishing half the time.
Right.
Chasing
Yeah.
crayfish around. And then go out there under the Cherry Hill Bridge or any of those bridges out there in those holes and just crush smallmouth. And I don't see any smallmouth in Deer Creek anymore, at least up in the Rock State Park area. I don't know if they're there where it feeds into the flats here, but yeah, it's just kind of weird how the fishery changes like that.
and I say yes, they're still there, but I'm not saying that with a great knowledge base because I haven't done that kind of fishing
Yeah.
for quite a few years. I mean, I boat fish now and I kayak. The kayaking thing is like my passion now, and shore fish a lot at different places along the Susquehanna.
Yeah.
So and now the big fish up in those creeks are snakeheads. So and
Have you caught one yet?
one.
Yeah.
Shoot,
There's so many out there. It's like, I haven't caught one yet. I
Yeah,
saw one last year, just out here at the marinas, and just one night, just was bored, went for a walk with my fishing rod, and had one little white rooster tail on me, and I saw like a fry ball going by, and I had never seen that before. I'm like, I guess that's what a fry ball looks like.
Right.
Behind it, it had to have been a 30-inch snakehead, just chasing it around very slowly up along the bulkhead. And I sat there, dropped my rooster tail on it for 2 hours, could not get it to bite. And I got a buddy who goes over there and slays them on topwater all the time, but I don't have the patience for snakehead.
Yeah.
You know where my passions are with fish, and it's not snakehead.
Yeah, and mine, I've never committed to fully targeting them either. And the one I caught was a total accident. I wasn't fishing for snakehead. It was last June 1st, opening day of rockfish up, and I was up by the dam in the rocks in my kayak, and I was fishing for rockfish, but they were running a little bit. The water was a little too strong where I wanted to be for rockfish. So I pulled back in a little bit to a cove, and I was just throwing a MEP spinner.
Yeah.
And first cast, bang, and it was snakehead. The only one I caught that year.
Did it fight at all for you? I like getting people's opinions on this because I hear so many different things. I hear it's a strong bite and then a catfish roll in. I mean, is that what it was for you?
Pretty much. I think we talked about that, and I heard the same thing, and how crazy they are in the fight, and it wasn't a super impressive fight to me by any means. It was more of a like a walleye fight more so, and I don't know. You haven't caught a walleye, right?
I've caught one walleye while I was sleeping on a dock.
Okay, so I catch a lot of walleye, and they are a different. They're not a head shaking fish like a rockfish or something like that. They're more of a heavy weight kind of fish, and that's kind of like what that snakehead was. Although once and you hear once you get them in and you get them in the net, they go crazy, and that's true. It did. It ended up going crazy, and after I got a picture, I was trying to put it back in the net, and it freaked out and jumped out of my hands and back in the water. But
At least you got one on your belt. I still don't have one.
yeah, I have a picture of it.
Yeah, I might try to get one this year, but I got bigger goals. New boat, bigger goals now. I guess the next thing I want to talk about, is the flats here. I mean, we just got finished up the catch and release season. You comfortable talking about the flats around here?
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's kind of, we all try to kind of keep it a secret. My opinion on this year is it started. I mean, I don't know. It looks like it might be rebounding a little bit from that little short window we had. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell because we can't fish right now.
Yeah.
I mean, normally, so April 6th, Yeah,
this
we
is
should
this
be
is
out
the time
there,
where it's
like,
smashing.
right now. We should be out there slamming
Yeah,
stripers right now, catch and release,
all
just
swimming away healthy too.
hammering, yeah, lure wise and all that, but we don't know because we can't go, we can't even go catch and release them right now. So, as far as my opinion, like what I think up here, I mean, I had a pretty good March,
Yeah,
but I had a pretty good March last year too, and I think the water temps were pretty nice. So the first fish I caught this year was March 10th. The water temps were 41 degrees, and it was me and one other boat. And I was in a kayak, and no fish had been caught. All the people at my network I'd talked to out there, there weren't fish there. Nobody had caught a fish yet, but you don't know unless you go and all that. So I went out and had a pretty good morning that morning. So,
yeah. Was it just one that morning?
No, I caught like 5 that morning.
That's a pretty good day in 41-degree water.
In that area and how I'm fishing that, yeah, that's a good day. I know, like on the flats area, some of the areas we talk about, and I've had 100 fish days out there, but these fish we're talking about, these giant fish in this area, 5 fish is a good day.
Yeah, because a lot of guys I talked to, you were in the tournament that I just hosted. It was only 15, 16, 17 people in there. A lot of the guys that were fishing up there, they were saying they were getting 1 in the morning, and then the rest of the day was dead. I'm like, it takes years and years to get the right techniques down up there, that of which I've never even tried.
Yeah.
Mainly because I sold my kayak, but which is another funny story I want to mention. That's how you and me met. I was out like an idiot in bibs, and the water was like 47 degrees or something like that. Yeah. And
at the most, because it was like February 2 years ago. We were yellow perch fishing.
Yeah, we were yellow perch, but it was super. It was
cold.
Yeah, it was cold water. It would have killed me.
It was cold enough to die.
Yeah. Yeah. And Scott rolls up and he's like, "Hey, buddy, I'm just kind of observing from a distance over there. I don't know if it's the smartest idea." And I'm like, I'm already out here. I'm just going to hang on tight. Which I sold the kayak because it did scare the death out of me. After you talked to me, I put a trolling motor on the kayak. And one day, I was anchored out on the kayak and accidentally hit the throttle on the trolling motor. And I just started going in circles, in cold water. And I was like, I'm done with this, dude. I'm totally done with that. That's when I got that John boat.
Yeah, it's not something to play around with. And when I've had conversations with other people, and I don't do it out of like a, hey, I'm telling you what to do, or I'm seriously doing it out of concern for people. Like people don't really realize the danger they're in. They don't, because number one, in a kayak, nobody ever thinks they're going to flip out of it. Okay, so nobody ever does. Well, I don't plan on going in the water.
Yeah.
Until you do. And that's a big thing in kayak, until you do. Because you're going to. At some point, you think you're invincible in that kayak, and you're not. You're going to make some mistake. You're going to reach for something. You're going to
do what I did, accidentally hit the trolling motor and go in circles.
That. You're going to snag and then be in current. And that's a really bad thing, too, is current in cold water, because that adds a whole new dimension to kayaks and being in cold water. And I feel very comfortable in my kayak, and it's a really good kayak, and I've never flipped.
It's a Hobie, right?
It's a Hobie Compass. I've never flipped my kayak here. I did go on a trip to Panama in a Hobie Outback and dumped in the Pacific Ocean twice. So it opened my eyes, and luckily that was 80 something degree water.
Yeah.
And on PFDs, and we had we had boats out with us. We had the spotter boats and with us. How
did you flip there?
So the first one was a roosterfish. caught a roosterfish on a live lining rod. Probably about a 48 to 50 inch rooster. So a really big, powerful fish. If anybody knows anything,
I didn't even know they got that big.
Oh yeah, they get bigger, but that's a good one. That's a really good one, and they are the strongest fish. You think a rock? Oh my god! So the roosterfish are in the jack family. So Jack Crevalles, if you've ever fought one of those,
I've caught albies, which are small but powerful. I imagine it's probably just a giant false albie.
Yeah, so they
pelagic
are
fish,
so strong.
Yeah.
So just another level of strong. So Bait Runner, which I'm very familiar with. I've used them around here. I was comfortable with it.
What size is that? Like a 5,000 or 6,000?
It was I think it was a 6,000 maybe. Yeah. So it had a the release, and how bait runners work. Yeah. So I was live lining a fish called a moonfish that I caught, that I was live lining for bait. Hook up with that. spotter boat's over, and I'm on the radio telling, calling in, hey, I'm hooked up, and they're waving at me like, oh yeah, that's good.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm like, okay. So I get it to the boat, and it comes up about 20 yards out, and it's tail wrapped, and it's up on its side, and I'm like, I've caught tuna before that have tail, and it's usually doesn't end well. Like they flip out because they didn't get, they're still green, so it didn't have all its energy burned up.
Yeah.
So I get it towards the kayak, and I bring it around, and I think I'm doing everything right, So I've got it all GoPro'd and everything to it. I'm all excited. Like this was my, outside of a black marlin out of a kayak, like this was my dream bucket list fish, man. This rooster fish. This is why I went there. So I have it right beside the boat, and I'm calling on my radio again, like, hey man, I got it up. And normally they run over on their boats,
That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and they're catching bait though for other clients, so they're over there, and I'm calling them, looking at them because they're probably 100 yards away, and they're like not paying any attention. I'm like, okay, so I grab its tail and I swing it towards me. I put my rod up in the front of the Outback, and I flip that lever up so it'll release, right? So it's a bait runner. So I flip the lever up so it can release. So I'm doing everything right. Pull it over, slide my hand inside. There's a gill inside their gill plates. They have like almost like a handle you can like grab.
Like a shoulder, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I grab this, and when I go to pull this thing in, and they do the same thing. This thing went crazy, ballistic, crazy, rips out of my hand, goes down, and I'm like, my first thought's like, oh, okay. I'm just going to let it take off. I'm going to reach up and grab my rod, and I'll bring him back in.
Yeah.
I look up, and my rod's doubled over, so the release didn't hung up, so it didn't dump line.
You in.
So the fish dumped my kayak, and I see the rod in like matter of seconds. Like as I see the rod double, and I reach up to try to get the rod, I'm underwater.
And that's scary too, because like, what if your hand got wrapped on that thing? Like, just scenarios are scary like that,
Well, where this got, and I talk about current and kayak. So, I know all the techniques of getting back in a kayak and all that if you flip. So we were fishing this morning. We mother shipped out, so we loaded the kayaks and we went up to this other area where it's a little cove and there's a big river that comes out there. So we were actually in close to shore, and there's current. There's a lot of current coming out of this area. So I come up, and the good thing with the kayak, like everything's tethered in those kayaks, so all your rods are tied down, so you're not worried about losing this thing. First thing that blew my mind was I came up and I felt like I was drowning, and I'm like, what is going on? Well, I had a full face buff on and all that stuff.
You're waterboarding yourself.
I was waterboarded. Yeah, it sucked in my face, and I'm like, I can't breathe. What's going on? Why? So I pull that down, and I'm like, oh, okay. And again, PFD'd, and I wasn't panicked. I'm not drowning. I'm not. So, and I'm in warm water. So I'm like, all right. So I'll, my kayak was turtled. So I'm like, all right, I'll flip my kayak back over, and I hear the boat coming to me now. Now they're coming.
Yeah.
So I try to get, a technique in the kayak to flip it back over and everything is, so the kayak's this way, you kind of get your body sideways against the kayak like this, and you need to get your feet up so you can reach across the kayak and then pull it back towards you. So I'm in this current on the wrong side of the kayak. It's sucking me under the kayak. So I can't get my feet because it's pulling me under the kayak, and now the boat's with me, and they're like, Get your feet up. Get your kayak turned over. I'm like, I can't. We're in this current. The current's sucking me under, and they're looking at me like, oh yeah, that's a problem. I'm like, just pull me in the boat, and then I'll flip it over. So I just grabbed on and jumped in the boat, and we flipped it over, and we kind of talked about what happened, and so that was horrible because I had my GoPro on, which was waterproof. But it was a GoPro Session, and I don't know if you're not running a Session, but
Session's little square ones.
It's a little square one, and they're waterproof. But the problem is they have an internal battery, and you can't swap batteries. So once that battery dies, you got to charge the whole thing up. So how I avoided that was I had a big external battery pack, and I had it plugged into it so it would run the whole time. So the battery hatch was open. So when I went under, it fried my GoPro. Lost all the footage of that. The whole fish never got to see anything up. So I'm sick. About, here I had this really awesome fish right here, my bucket list rooster fish. No, I didn't, because I have no proof, never saw anything.
You know it.
Yeah.
But it's cool to have those memories.
Yeah. And, back at the lodge, when you get back in and you're telling the story, and it's kind of like, yeah, sure. Like that was a jack that flipped you. That wasn't a rooster fish. But So that time, and the second time I flipped there was way different conditions. So we were way out offshore off this area called Wahoo Rock. We were probably 7 miles offshore. So there was no current or anything like that to deal with. And it's a funny, like, so, and I purposely dumped that time because I had a hat. I had a hat on that my son had given me for Christmas or something, this hat I really liked. And I was moving a rod or doing something like switching a rod out, and it knocked my hat off, and it was like in the water. And I'm like, so I'm paddling to try to get around to get back to my hat as I see it going under, and I'm like, I ain't gonna make it. Like that hat's gonna be gone, and I'm not. And I'm like, nah, it's not acceptable. So I kind of dumped myself, grabbed the hat, and then with no current, I flipped the kayak back over and jumped back in.
Yeah.
You know, it was.
Yeah. Unplugged the GoPro that time, right?
It was a different GoPro. I had my buddy who was with me on the trip because my GoPro was fried. It's dead. It's gone. He wasn't using his at all, so he had like a Hero 5 or something like that. So I had it mounted up on what I use on my kayak now, a boom, a reversible boom on the front, which is an awesome setup. But so that's my kayak, my two flip stories. I've never flipped here, but I by no means do I take for granted that I can't. So anytime I'm out, there's the 120 rule in a kayak, air temperature versus water temperature. If they don't both equal 120, so if you don't have if you got 60-degree air and 60-degree water, you're okay to not have a dry suit on.
Yeah.
If you're under 120 on those two combinations, you should be in a dry suit.
Yeah.
And I'm always in a dry suit if I'm in something like that because you can go in the water.
What do you mean under 120? Can you explain that again?
So air temperature plus water temperature.
Okay, so if it's 60 degrees out and it's 50-degree water, you're under 120 dry suit.
Correct.
That's a good rule.
Yep. It's not my rule. It's
a
rule that if you look up like that's a safety rule that most kayakers know. Like that's a very typical common rule. So 60 and 6. If you've got 60-degree air temp and 60-degree water, you're at 120.
Even in 60-degree water,
yeah,
I mean, depending on who you are and how healthy you are, like that can lock you up and cause heart attacks.
It can.
Because I was looking up last year, I was getting antsy when swim season, and I'm looking, the water's 70 degrees out there, and I'm going like, I think that's good, chilly, right? Yeah. It's chilly. I mean, we took my fiance's little brother and sister out. They were swimming around in 70-degree water, but those are kids. They're fine. Like kids are meant for that. I'm like, should I jump in? And it was like, on Google, it was like, no, may cause heart attacks. And then my anxiety just goes like, I don't want to have a heart attack. I'll just wait till it's 80.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a decent rule. And I see people all the time out there in terrible clothes, waders are the worst thing, right? People think when they go out and they're going to fill up and they're going to sink you. They're going to take you right
that's
down.
That's what I was wearing.
You were. I know. That's why I was like, I stayed behind you and watched. I would have saved you if or the two boats around. I mean, see, the days like that when there's a lot of boats around, most likely boaters are pretty good. They're probably going to save you if they can. But there's times when I've been out in the morning or late in the evening in some of these areas with current and stuff like that where there's nobody else out there. So you better have a plan on what you're going to do if you flip or understand or, so many people don't think about those things. And that's why I keep telling they just don't think it'll happen to them. So therefore they don't have a plan. They don't think about, well, if it does happen, what am I going to do? And that's the worst situation to be in because you don't know what then you're going to freeze is what you're going to do. Yeah, I mean, not just freeze literally if it's that cold, but I mean, you're going to freeze up and not know how to react. And you don't want to do that. Yeah.
Well, I was out with you last year on your boat and we were rock fishing and we saw that dude flip over. I mean, it was a little bit warmer out, but it was still still semi cold. Like I think it was at the end of March last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the dude just kept going. I'm like, all right.
He had to be freezing later. I know.
Oh yeah, he had to be freezing.
Well, and that's the problem. Part of it is even if if the water temps are that cold, and even if you get back in your kayak and you get to shore, if you don't have a change of clothes or something, I mean, hypothermia is going to set in.
Yeah.
Because now you're in soaked, freezing cold clothes, and your body's going to start shutting down in like 4 minutes.
Strip down.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, that's why there's another thing about always having a pack with dry clothes in your car or something if you're in cold water because you never know. So what else? So flats.
Yeah, so back to the flats. If you've ever watched my other podcast, I go off in all different types of directions because as people are talking, I just go like, I want to talk about this now. Yeah, yeah. So you and me have had 45-minute conversations on the phone about 20 different things. That's when you need to press record is for those conversations. So I guess I'll just guide this here. Right now we're in a no fish a no fish time. Just for the people around here or anywhere. I mean, you're an experienced fisherman. What is there to do now? I mean, we got white perch, right?
White perch and shad.
Yeah. See, the shad run is something I've never experienced. My dad's always been like, it can be really fun. How big do these shad get?
So there's two different kinds of shad that come up. There's hickories are usually the first ones, and they have the 4 black dots on down their back. They're pretty distinctive. And then there's American shad, which are bigger. They can get up to like 3-4 pounds. The Americans are pretty big, and they're more of that white silver, just all white silver.
Is that the poor man's tarpon?
Yeah, I mean, hickories
American?
do the same thing. Hickories jump like crazy too. They're incredible. I mean, so they're a blast. Like they're a blast to catch when they're thick and they're up here. And I'll show you, like I said, I've got some examples you asked me about. I'll show you the rigs that I use and how I fish them. It's a double rig. There's a shad dart with a spoon behind it. And when they're thick, you're doubling up all the time. So you're catching 2 at once. And
do they still get thick here?
Yeah.
I was going to say, from what I recollect, I mean, they're a migratory fish, correct? I mean, they come up here to spawn, and that's why there's a lift at the dam, correct? It's only for the shad.
Right.
It's not for rockfish. Is there lifts at the Holtwood too? I mean, just to keep moving them up?
I think there are.
Yeah.
I think there are.
Yeah, because my buddy was down, I think it was the Potomac last week, fly fishing for them. I mean, they weren't very big, but I'm sure they're fun. I mean, I definitely would like to get into that.
They are fun, and they fight really, really good for the size of fish they are, and especially, if we fish around the dam and anywhere in the river where that current's running. So, current adds fight to anything. So when you hook one and it's got the current and they're fighting with the current and everything, and if you get 2 on at once, it's really cool.
Do you have to be on a kayak for that, or
No, I do most all of that from shore.
Yeah.
I've caught some in my kayak, but most of what I do, it's from shore.
Yeah, and are you just casting into current, basically?
Yep.
Yeah. Are they a fish that just... I mean, most fish like current, it's like walleye piece of structure plus current equals fish.
Well, so shad, supposedly they are not feeding. They're not eating to eat. They're striking. You're catching them on like reaction strike, and they're angry or something swimming by them. So that's what I've always heard, that they're not eating. So they're reaction striking.
Yeah.
So current helps, if nothing else, to keep you from getting snagged all the time. So when you're fishing,
especially in that area.
Yeah. I mean, it's rocky, and you're going to get snagged. Like beeper, I tell people all the time, like if you're probably not catching fish.
Yeah.
Because they're in the rocks, they're right there, they're right against the shore. Like one really big technique to use is, so the current, so if you're, facing and coming from the dam and the water's running down towards Perryville out of the dam. So the current running, so left to right, if you're on the Harford County side.
Yeah.
And you cast it like a 45. So you never cast upstream, you're going to snag all the time. You cast it like a 45 going downstream, and then you kind of like, I don't even reel. So once you cast out, I'm just tapping my rod, just flicking every once in a while, letting that current run that rig until it's all the way at shore. And sometimes I won't even reel up there. I'll just hold it right against the rocks at shore and just keep twitching until you catch one.
Yeah.
You don't even have to reel in.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't have known that. Just thinking instinctually, I would have cast it upstream and then steady retrieve on the way in. But I guess that's how
you would have snagged up all the time.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I went out a couple weeks ago for some walleye. A dude said, whatever, you go out at this certain time and cast in this certain spot. I lost like 10 jig heads that within 30 minutes, and I said, screw this, I'm done, dude.
Well, I went Saturday just to see if shad were there. My son wanted to go down, so we ran down, and they weren't there yet. I didn't think they were, but there's probably some stragglers coming up now. Here's me with shad, though, right? So if they're not thick, I'm not sitting there working hard. Yeah. I'm not going to sit here for 2 hours to work to catch 2 shad.
Yeah.
So
same thing with yellow perch. Like I don't go out, we do go out. You go out to feel the water out, and see if they're there thick yet, and then instantly you're like, they're not here. Wait a week and go back.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
That's how
I don't have the patience for all that. So if they're thick, and I'm going to know pretty quick if they're here. I'm going to catch, if they're there 1 or 2 casts, I'm going to catch them. So it's funny. So I went down with my son, and I had tied a rig up for him, and I didn't have any other shad rigs made up, so I was going to tie one on for me. I'm like, I'm going to cast. I had a X-Wrap just to see if there's any walleye, because the same spot, there's walleye there too. I catch a lot of walleye in that area. So first cast, man, bang, I catch a walleye right there. And like, so there are walleye here, and I didn't catch another walleye.
Yeah.
But walleye are almost like They're like a musky fish. You don't catch a million of those either when you're
Yeah.
down walleye fishing. A lot of times,
But see,
you
a
catch
fish like a
one or two.
walleye, like I would be happy going out for an hour and catching 3.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Walleye's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fun. And last year, to be honest, I've talked to you about this. I caught a ton of walleye last year in my kayak up in the rocks in July, which is not a walleye month. So walleye are more usually cold water fish. So you're catching them like, through the winter months. You can catch them through January. I have pictures of me holding walleye when there's snow on the ground and everything.
Yeah.
So, but October is a primo month for walleye. October, November, but you'll catch them through December, January sometimes. But then again, like now, like April, May, it's pretty good walleye. But usually when the water really warms up, so say July, they're really hard to catch. But for whatever reason, last year now they were running and it was still water. So the dam, I don't know if you noticed, all last summer they hardly ever ran water. So they were running one small at 5,000 CFS, so cubic feet per second, at the dam, which is no water at all. So I would get my kayak way up in areas and troll a spinner.
Yeah.
A MEPS or a little 3-inch paddle tail, and was just wearing walleye out. It's crazy. In July, I don't know.
What do you think the drone rules are on the getting close to the dam to check out those pools? I've always thought about that as I'm driving over. I'm like, there's pools down there.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They would frown upon that.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, I know after 9/11, they because you used to be able to like fish off the
Catwalk.
Yeah. I mean, that was before my time. I mean, I was in 5th grade when 9/11 happened, so I wasn't really fishing at the dam then. But
Yeah, I never did that. I never fished off that catwalk.
Yeah.
Ever. I've heard all the stories about it, but I never did it.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I think they would frown upon that. Let me grab this real quick. I'll show you a shad rig.
Okay, yeah.
Because I know you want to see.
So I'll take a picture of these too and superimpose them on the podcast for whoever's listening.
All right, so I thought I had one tied up, but I must have tied it on my rod. So what I'm going to do is I'll make one right now. So there are, like I said, I use a shad dart and a spoon behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two lures on the one thing. So these spoons, and there's Nungeezers or whatever, are excellent. So you can use little number 1 Tonys, which are way more expensive than these. These are 2-pack, say for $4.49.
Is that like a Walmart thing? Or
yeah,
Herbs thing?
Yeah, any local tackle shop, like places. I'm sure Herbs probably has them. A place out in Conowingo, if I'm going by the dam that way, they have these. So there's 2-pack. It's a 2-pack, and then gold or silver. They're weird. Some days you'll say like, oh, they're only hitting the gold spoon. Some days it's silver, but usually if they're there, they're gonna hit either one. So how I do a rig. So this is 12-pound test mono. Pull off about 3 feet or so. And then again, have plenty of these because you will snag up and
Those
lose
are
some.
just shad darts.
These
there?
are shad darts. So great colors. The 2 colors I use are either chartreuse or pink.
Yeah, bright.
Yep. So I'll tie this one with a chartreuse. Oh my gosh, it's dark over here.
It's a man cave.
This is definitely testing my eyes here.
Well, it doesn't help when you have the LEDs shining from the other side either.
So
See, I have like a big shop light up there, but when I turned it on, it's just because this room is like just been under construction constantly. I turn a big light on and I look in the GoPro, it just looks like dust everywhere. People would think this is an episode of Ghost Hunters.
So tie, whatever your favorite knot is. I'm gonna use a Palomar on both ends of this.
So I'm gonna get a picture of this too before you leave today, so I can post it on there. That's what's crazy about me. I get so obsessed with when the yellow perch hit, I'm all into yellow perch, and then when there's nothing to do now, like if I go out and have a good shad day, I'll be into shad for 3 weeks every day.
I'm going to tell you, and you haven't done it, which I'm amazed. Like
Yeah.
you will have a blast catching shad when they're thick, and it'll be. And there's the old timer saying of when the dogwoods are blooming, the shad are running. If you haven't heard that, that's true. So if you're driving down the road right now and you see right now the wild fruit trees are blooming, so the wild cherries and the wild pears and stuff. So the next thing it'll bloom, so the low dogwoods in the woods. If you look in the woods and you see those low dogwoods and the brushy stuff, when it starts blooming white, shad are thick.
Yeah, my parents have a dogwood in their yard. So
Well, that's an ornamental.
Yeah.
So that blooms at a little different
yeah.
times. It's probably
Theirs
blooming
always
now.
bloomed like on opening day for the Orioles.
Okay. I have an ornamental too. I have a Chinese dogwood, and it blooms late. It blooms later than the Japanese dogwood.
Yeah.
And
How long do the shad hang around for? Just a couple weeks?
no, so I've caught them into like mid-May before.
Okay. So, because as we keep saying, there's nothing to do fishing wise now. So I put my boat in the shop, just get it all cleaned up for the summer.
It's a shame. I know we've talked about the politics of all that with the rockfish and the.
We'll get back more into it because I think we both have good insight on that.
Yeah. Okay, so.
So you got about 5 foot in between the lures there.
Yeah, and that's doesn't have to. It doesn't have. There's no magic number with that other than you need to leave yourself a little bit of distance because you're going to see what I'm going to do now. So what I do now is you want the spoon behind the dart. So I'm going to shorten this up. I'm going to come to about right here and make a double surgeon's loop right here.
And they don't get twisted like that.
I mean, they
will.
occasionally will, but just spin a loop when you throw them. I'm going to tell you, I've caught thousands of shad like this. Yeah. And it's never been you know what I mean? So it works. Yeah. Some people might buy like really fancy rigs and go out and get all these real, much fancier ways to do this. But you see that? So you got a shad dart with a spoon behind it. And that's it. Tie your main line off right here.
So this is something you want to do at your house on a rainy day before you go shad fishing.
Yep. And I take little Ziploc baggies, and I have about 12 of these in my bag with me, ready to go. Some days I'll never snag up, and some days you snag all the time.
I'll snag.
So, I mean, again, usually if you're not snagging, you're not in the right area. Then that means the current's too strong, and everything's staying too high. You might need a heavier shad dart. They come in different sizes too, so you might need a heavier shad dart. Sometimes it's really running. You might want to go 2 shad darts. So instead of a spoon behind it, shad dart,
because they have more weight to them. Yeah, the spoon will just float.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the spoon's cool too. So I've caught walleye when I'm shad fishing on that spoon. I've caught smallies, largemouth hitting that spoon. I've had rockfish hit that spoon and just spool me out and break me off. Like if a big rockfish came up and ate that spoon, you can tell pretty quick. Like, I'll just grab my spool and let it break off because you're going to get spooled if you don't. So
you're using like a panfish rod for this, basically, or like a 6 foot panfish rod. Yeah, I guess you got to make it fun. You're not going out there with a surf rod,
right? But I would say this. So I would say try to use a 7 foot rod or even longer, because the reason you want a long rod fishing from the shore. So like I said, as you're casting those 45s. The current sweeping your rig down. When you get near the rocks, you want to be able to keep that out just off the rocks, out away from you. And that's where a lot of your hits happen. Yeah, right there on the rocks on the shore.
Yeah, because if you're holding your rod out 7 foot, it's really 10 foot out.
It's keeping you out off that. If you're in here, it's gonna sweep it into the rod. You're gonna hang every time.
Well, lucky for me, I accidentally bought a 7 foot St. Croix panfish rod.
There you go.
Which I meant to buy it for yellow perch, but fishing off a boat with a 7 foot panfish rod sucks.
So, well, that's perfect for this. There you go. Wow. So it wasn't a weight. You got a great shad rod.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to call me when you find these shad, and we're gonna have to go.
It'll be any day. We're going down. It's fun, and it's a blast for kids too. If parents are looking to kind of get kids into fishing, we always say. You want to take kids when they're catching, not when it's boring as crap and you're just sitting there and never getting a bite, because kids will never want to do it again. Yeah. When shad fishing's really good, there's so many of them. It's you're catching all like every kids, cast. Yeah. And there's a little bit to it. Like I said, like you can't. I've been down there with kids that just they can't catch a thing, and I'm just hooking up and handing them the rod all the time because there's a little bit of that. Like I said, you don't but Yeah,
A little bit of nuance to it.
a little bit, but it's not rocket science.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. Yeah, I hope you give me a call because I'd love to get into it. And knowing me, I'll be texting you every day, like, "Hey, man, check it out. Check it out. Thanks so much. Check what I found out here." So,
Yeah, it's fun. It's cool.
yeah,
We'll
maybe
get
I'll
out
make
there.
a video too. But it's hard to make videos in these spots without giving away the backgrounds.
You know, well, the thing with shad fishing is, man. I mean,
There's so many
you
of
can
them.
go anywhere up and down. If you go to the dam and you walk up that trail that goes up towards Deer Creek,
Yeah.
you drop in anywhere down along that river
On
when
the Hartford
shad are
side,
running.
right?
Yeah, on the Hartford side, or on the Cecil side, anywhere in the Octorara.
Yeah.
But they usually come up the Hartford side first, and
Yeah.
they kind of migrate across. But anywhere up through that side, you don't have to be. It's not. There's not a magic spot. You know, it's not like, oh, I got to be. But people still do that. They'll see somebody catch a couple shad in one spot and like all like crowd in on you, and they're like, you can be anywhere and do that. You don't need to be right here next to me. But,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what people think. Same thing with the boats out there. You know, I was out the last day of the season. I took a buddy Steve and Chris out, and there was like 5 boats out, and we get out there and they go, "That looks like a strong bite over there." I'm like, I have seen so many people get fooled out here from boats. Just one person just out when they're out, and then a whole group of people, and I'm catching 200 yards away. You know, the last day of the season was actually kind of weird for rockfish up here because we didn't get anything at first. The water was all muddy, and then we strolled out right where the current splits, right between Sandy Point. You know where that green marker is? Mm-hmm. We did a drift right through there, like on in between the current, and it was like looked like the Caribbean out there. It was crystal clear. Either side of the currents was muddy as hell. Couldn't see anything.
yeah, well, that's gold.
Yeah, big fat fish in there. And,
That's
and,
gold
that's
when
what
you
they
find
say.
that.
Find clear water, you're going to find fish.
Clear
Especially
water
here.
or warmer water.
Yeah.
The early season out on the flats. If you find a couple, a 2 degrees is everything.
Yeah.
If you find 2-degree warmer water somewhere, and a lot of it has to do with which way the tide's flowing.
Yeah.
It's pulling water in or off the flats, depending on where you want to be.
Yeah, it's super. I've only been up here for 3 years. I'm learning, and I think I'm learning quick. But I also know that there's so much more to learn. You know, the first thing I did when I got up here was read Walleye Pete's article, which is super helpful in trying to understand that, you know, that the dam's going to be colder water. You know, that up in the Northeast River is going to be warmer, and depending on which way the tide goes, you know, because I'll go out with you. Like when we saw those people at Sandy Point last year catch all those fish, and we went out, and you were like, "This is the perfect conditions," and I'm like, "Why?" You know, I don't understand why.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just water temperature and the way, you know, the way things lined up there.
Yeah.
I do want to get into the conservation thing here. I'm having David Sikorsky on tomorrow, so you guys are going to be within a couple days of releasing a podcast. So what's your take on this whole thing? What's your stance, and where do you think it's going? You know, do you think it's going to the M word?
I don't know. I think we're going to find out in maybe by next year where the next spawn stands and how this next spawn goes. I'm frustrated. I'm very frustrated about the catch and release rules. And I know, you know, it's people will say, well, yeah, because that's what you do. You know, they're taking away the kind of fishing that you do. I'm sure the guys that are all into the trophy season are frustrated too because, you know, they can't do their trophy season. And so I get it. And I understand that there's, you know, different nuances for depending on what you're into.
Yeah.
But just in my mind and with science, right? So we want to say science shows that cold water catch and release fishing is not harming the large majority of these fish that are caught.
Yeah.
Where I would give concession is that I don't think you should be bait fishing catch and release.
Yeah, correct.
I don't think you should do it
We've
at
all
all.
seen it. This is just, you know, you and me have seen it. If we're bait fishing or somebody else is bait fishing, they're going at that thing whole and it's getting swallowed. That hook is not. I mean, circle hooks are meant to get in the lip.
But they don't always.
They don't always, and it's very rare that we're out there fishing a jig and that thing's not hooked in the corner of its lip to a dangerous for us scenario to where that fish is almost getting off on every cast.
Right.
You know, if we don't keep pressure on that fish, it's getting off, which means it's a healthy hook at that point.
Yeah, and the same thing. So early season, when I'm fishing in my kayak and I'm trolling big lures, right? So I've never had a deep hooked fish with that. Everything is hooked in the mouth. The only one I had that was I was concerned with at all this year. I had a big broken back plug on, and it was hooked on the front hook in the mouth, but the back part of the plug had worked. It wasn't inside its mouth when I brought it to the kayak, but when I was bringing it in to pop the hooks, it flipped, it swung in, and I was like, because that's tragic to me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to harm a fish like that in the season. It's awesome. I mean, we do this because we love it.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't want to do anything that's going to end that. So luckily, you know, I popped that hook, and it didn't touch any, like it didn't hook on anything else. It was like
floating
just came
in his
right
mouth.
out. Yeah. So I was like, and you know, and these fish, and I agree with the catch and release and using proper protocols. Don't have that fish out of the water for 5 minutes, flopping in your boat,
Passing it around for
passing
pictures.
it around.
CPR.
Yes.
Catch, pick, release, quick.
I mean, and that's what's great with my setup. And I'm not saying it's, you know, a boat could be similar, like, but in the kayak, I literally have that fish in the water with a boga right beside my kayak, and I keep it there. And I want to picture in the current.
Yeah.
And I have my GoPro running the whole time, so I have it on video. And the only reason all I do is I pull that thing up, and sometimes I have to pull it up to pop the hook because I got to watch in the kayak. When you start leaning in the kayak, you know, talked about kayak safety, start leaning hard, trying to pop a hook. So I'll pull it up, pop that hook, hold that fish up in front of me. The GoPro's running, so I know I can freeze a picture off of that. And then boom, 10 seconds, that fish is in the water, back in the water. 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm making sure the fish is strong. There was only one fish I revived at all this year because the other ones were ripping out of my hand before I could even, you know, and I mean, and the one I revived was fine. I'm always going to make sure that fish is kicking strong before I push it off, you know.
Yeah. So. I took a group out. It was a kid in the tournament. I think I told you about it. The one kid caught a 24-inch, was his first striper, fat 24. And I said, let's do the release. And before I could even show him how to do it, he dropped it in the water.
It's gone.
And it rolled like almost on its side. I grabbed it real quick. It was a quick revive and release. But that was nice. I got to show somebody how to do it and, you know, spread knowledge on. But, you know, the 40-inch we caught this year, you know, we had it out of the water for 25 seconds, you know, quick measure, got it back in the water, grabbed the tail, grabbed the mouth. I put the boat in gear, and it was a quick getaway. And that's a lot to me. Like you said, we both care about this, and we kind of surround ourselves, or I do. I don't know your fishing group, but I'm sure you do. Surround yourself with people who think the same way as us.
Yeah.
And it baffles me. And I'm playing devil's advocate here, or I'm trying to. I know why people want to keep fish. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around it. And you got all these head boats out there. And it drives me crazy because I used to be the guy who wouldn't go fishing unless you could keep the fish. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, when I was, you know, in my early 20s. And then I went fishing with the Captain Brad, and he kind of changed my ways, showed me how fun it was to go out there, catch and release. The release is fun to me too.
Yeah.
You know, I like getting that good release video, that picture, and it's you can catch that fish next year.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, you know, like I said, pond fishing, I didn't keep bass when I was growing up either. Yeah. But I get like rockfish are good to eat. So they taste good. They are. And like really fresh rockfish, go home and fillet a rockfish and make it and grill it up that night. Right? Like it's really good to eat. But I'll give that up forever to be able to catch fish.
Correct. There's plenty of other good fish
I can go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can go buy my dinner and get fish at a restaurant. Yeah. But there's
also other good fish out there. You know, yellow perch, to my knowledge, are plentiful. Mm-hmm. We keep those. You know, to a certain extent. You know, I don't try to load up my cooler every day because I go yellow perch fishing every day. But if I have a good day, I'll take my limit home.
Yellow perch, white perch is excellent.
Yeah, and
I keep a walleye here and there. You know, I don't keep all my walleye either. I've released walleye and have guys have heart attacks.
Yeah,
on the shore like. You're letting that go? Like, yeah.
Can I have it?
Yes.
No, I'm good. I hate when people ask me that. Can I have it? I'm like, no. You catch one. You can do what you want with it.
I mean, like I said, I'll keep because walleye is excellent eating fish. I mean, it's one of the best.
Yeah.
But I let them. I don't need to keep every fish I can. You know. So, yeah. The conservation side. It's frustrating that they took away April, our big month. So we've got this little tiny month of March now to fish, and you pray that the conditions, because the catch and release up here has to be perfect too. Like all the conditions have to line up just right.
Yeah.
You can't have these big rains and or snow runoffs in PA where they've got a whole bunch of spill gates running at the
Yeah.
dam, because that's it. It shuts it. You're done. It's
Yeah.
over. You can't have the water temps be too cold for the entire March. They're not going to push up in here.
Yeah.
So there's just all these things that have to just come into play and be perfect. In the last 2 years, they've been pretty good.
Yeah, well,
So,
I had 5 days this year because I can't get my boat up where some people go. I had 5 days out on the flats of decent fishing, and that was it. And it drove me crazy because
yeah.
I live in a water town. I go out here and stare at the water every day. I'm like, good lord.
Yeah, I will say this. So the flats area where you're talking about now, it wasn't very good this year. From what I didn't go out there one time. I'm just taking from
Yeah.
what you're telling me, and I'm hearing from Brad. Brad out there and people that I know how to catch fish. That
Yeah.
it wasn't. Now last year in March, because I had my boat out there in March, we had some great days. I mean, I had days where we were just slamming
Yeah,
fish
well,
out
last
there.
year was good.
Yeah,
I mean, you
so
had your boat out last
yeah,
year. I mean, it was
yeah.
the last 3 days of the season was when it really heated up. I mean, it was that Sunday
Yeah.
to that Wednesday. Brad went out that Tuesday and did very well in the morning. I went out that afternoon and got 3 fish.
Yep.
And we're fishing the same areas, doing the same techniques, and it's
The-
wild.
The next to last day last year, so not this March, but last March 30th, I caught a 51-inch rockfish.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and caught 2 really good ones that day. And it was just sickening because the next day, everything shut down. It was supposed to go, there was one more day left. March 31st would
I
have
think
been,
it was
but
blowing that
COVID.
day, yeah.
No, COVID shut it down, remember?
yeah.
So COVID happened, and you weren't allowed, they shut all fishing down for COVID. So you really only lost
Don't
the
go
one
fishing.
day.
You're gonna get
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, I know. Don't be by yourself on the water. But
Yeah.
but it happened. So I didn't fish that day. But so my last day was unforgettable that day. And then this year, again, I had some days that were I caught some. The fish I caught March 10th, I didn't tape it, I didn't measure it, but knowing fish the way I know, I mean, that was a 48 to 50 inch fish. It was a great fish. I had another fish that was a good 48 incher during that season. The other ones were 40. I think the one and that was the fish I had out of the water the longest was the one for your
For the
tournament because I
tournament,
had to throw a tape on it, enough to try to get my GoPro running and have a tape
Yeah.
laying on it. But
Still under a minute there, right?
yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, easy. So, I caught that. I caught several other ones that were like mid 30-inch fish, and it was fun. It's fun. It's a lot of work, and I say this all the time. People are like, I get comments all the time from people like, "Oh my gosh, how do you catch all these big fish? This is incredible." Well,
I'm not telling.
no, I do tell.
Yeah.
I've got no problem telling. But
Yeah.
what I say is, you got to put in the time. You got to put in the work. You can't just say, "Well, I'm gonna fish one day and expect to do this." You got to put in some effort, work, knowledge, all that kind of stuff. Equipment's got to be right to catch fish of that size. They test every part of your setup. So you've got to have the right equipment. Something's going to fail. I have those giant, so super shad wraps, giant lures. Like I switched the hooks out on those, and you think that they come with pretty stout hooks, and they do. And if you bought one and you looked, you'd be like, there's no way this hook's going to straighten out. They do.
Yeah.
So I've switched those out to stronger hooks because I've had them straightened out.
The 40 that was caught on my boat was on a number 10X wrap. We didn't change the hooks out on that.
Well, you're lucky.
I know. Well, he got it. I got it in the boat. I pulled it in the boat, and it was he pulls up the lure. 2 of the trebles were bent out, and I was like, oh.
Yep.
And
You're lucky.
And we weren't expecting that at all. And when I say like it seems better to me, there's no context behind my experience and why I'm saying it's better, other than in the 3 years that I've been fishing here, the fish this year seemed like a bigger class. They were definitely fatter than what I remember last year, but I could be wrong. And the fact that where we caught our fish was way further up in the flats than I'm used to. I'm used to catching them down where we were on that foggy day.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I guess that may be a sign. I don't know. It could have just been that day they were up chasing bait ball.
Well, you've heard all the stories and us talk about the past on the flats, right?
Yeah.
How good it used to be out there, and you would get, nonstop 40-inch fish.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't a 40-inch fish wasn't anything to get excited about because you were catching a lot of those. Now you catch that size of a fish out on the flats. That's a really good fish. That's a pretty big deal. And it's just not.
Did it used to be catch and release? Because I'm ignorant to the whole the past of rock fishing. Because I was catching catfish on top of the dam back then because I was
Yeah.
ignorant to the whole situation. But I mean, like in March and April, was that all catch and
It
release?
was. It was still all catch and release. So and my mindset was always like March was almost a throwaway month. I never hardly like there weren't usually that many fish out there in March. You would every once in a while, but it seems like it was cold. The water temps were a little cold. So it was always like the second week of April through the end of April were really, really good. Now I don't know I know from the time I've been rock fishing out there, it's always been so it opened like March 1, catch and release, and it would run through like I think it was like May 5th. But there was also this water temperature gauge. Like if the water temperature reached, I believe it was like 62 degrees. There was some number like 62 degrees. They would shut it down. So if you could have been May 1 if the water temps were too warm, they shut the season down.
See, I'm all for that. That's science.
Yeah,
that's a science you can get behind.
Right, absolutely. Because they did the original studies. You probably heard of this out on the flats, right, where they had fish and they would pen them. They had them in pens and they watched with the different water temps and how the mortality was with different water temps.
Yeah,
that was science. That's where they came up with those numbers. They didn't just pull them out of the air.
Yeah.
Like they actually did experiment. They did science on that.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, like I've
never
heard all the
of that.
stories.
That's incredibly interesting. But that's what needs to happen now is realistic studies. I hop on these massive phone calls. What are they? I don't know if it's with what organizations, but I guess DNR.
Yeah, and you mean like the legislative calls?
The discussions, and they let people kind of chime in on there and everything. And it's like just the numbers. I'm like, where are you getting these from? Mortality rate for catch and release is 9%. I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah,
that's if you're catching in July.
And that's been discussed a lot. And that was a number they kind of created because there was a magic number that the Atlantic States Marine Fishery Commission said they needed Maryland to get below. And they didn't really specify out to how they had to do it. They just had to show that they were below, and I can't remember what the actual number they had to be below. But they created this 9% savings for catch and release. Oh, if we take away April catch and release, that's a 9% savings. What?
Yeah, that's insane.
Like, no, it's not. Yeah. How about take away the midsummer acres and acres of floating dead fish down by the Bay Bridge I see floating when I'm fishing down there.
Yeah, it's 100 degrees outside.
And people are chumming up. And I'm going to tell you that, and like this, people will hate this too. And I get people have to make money and there's business in this and everything. But if we're talking about saving fish, I would be good with no bait fishing ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I'm
sure some people disagree. I don't disagree with
they
you.
will disagree. I mean, and again, I'm not saying, hey, is it easier to catch? And here's the reasoning. I've heard captains. I know a lot of these captains, and they're good people. Like, I don't have any angst against any of them.
Yeah.
But they're going to say, look, Scott, you know how to fish. Okay? You can come down here and jig fish up. I know you can. Right? Yeah. These people that come out fishing with me cannot. Yeah. Like, they're not going to go out and jig fish up down here. They can catch them. We go out and we drop lines and we chunk bait back there, and that's how they're going to catch them. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah.
There's also the teaching aspect. If you never teach people, they're never going to learn.
Yeah.
But I'm not making my living off of it, so it's hard for me to have a stance on it. But I've also I have an hour drive to work every day, and I'm constantly thinking about this, and just different scenarios in my head. And I'm going like, what if they were to? Because there is in my mind, and once again, admitting ignorance to the whole situation, it seems like to me there's a lack of just accurate research or logical research. Why not give these captains some kind of funds out of, if you were to raise, and these are just wild numbers out of my head, what if you were to raise the fishing license by $10? I would pay it. You'd pay it for accurate research, correct? And allocate this money to these captains that know where the fish are to go out and do research and turn in good numbers, and maybe save this population, because right now I think it's all heading towards the M word that no one wants to talk about.
Yeah. Well, and I think there is pretty good. So the Atlantic States, remember, we're talking about Maryland here, but there is the broader picture of the Atlantic States Marine Fishery Commission, who tracks the migratory fish all up and down from Maine all the way down through, right? Yeah. So, And all, it's not just Maryland. So all these other states are seeing a huge decline in the fishing and the fish population, Jersey and New York and all the way down through. So it's not just here. Now you'll get captains that go out and say, there's no problem with fishing whatsoever. I go out every day. I can go out every morning and have our limit in a half hour. You're fishing a biomass of fish in one area. You notice all your boat, you're all going to that one spot that's within probably a mile circular radius of itself.
Yeah, you see headboats, and
and you're all crammed into that one area. That's where all the fish are at that time. They're not all up and down the bay and all over the place like they used to be. They're all in that one area, and they're fishing in a barrel. And that's, the water quality's terrible. The oxygen levels are bad at that time, and the temperatures are way up. And it's and again, you're right. There's the huge political art because it's money. Like it's these people's livelihoods and jobs. But at some point, I would be worried I'm taking my job away, because if these fish don't survive,
it's short-sighted.
My job is going to be gone, because there's not going to, if the moratorium happens, you're done, right? So moratorium, what was it? Was it 85 to 89? The last moratorium, that's 5 years.
Yeah, I couldn't handle that.
You're not going to survive if you're a charter. You're going to go 5 years, and I guess they would find go fish for something else, but. Oof.
I've also thought about why don't they treat it like deer tags? You get 2 tags. If you want to use those 2 tags in it, you pay for the tags, and that money goes towards research. And these are for people catching fish. I'm not talking about head boats. Yeah. But if you were to tag these fish, you want to pay $5 per tag
to keep. Yeah.
And you can keep 2 fish a year, and the rest you can catch and release. You can go and have fun and wait for your white whale to come through and keep your 30-inch fish.
That's not a bad idea. I've heard a lot of other. There's some other options I've heard people throw out about make them keep the first, whatever it is. So if you're allowed to keep 2 fish, like the first 2 fish you catch, they're yours. They could be a 12 and a 14-inch fish, because the way it's set up now, so say it's what was it last year? Like 19-inch was a minimum, and then 1 over 28. So you keep, so if you're catching, there were a lot of 17-inch fish out there. So if you're catching 20 17-inch fish
in July,
you can't keep them. They're dead.
Yeah.
You're throwing it back. It's dead. They know it's dead.
Yeah.
But you're not allowed to keep it to try to get your 19 or 20-inch fish. So you've gone through 12 fish you killed. Oh, there's my 19. Now I got 1 to keep. Instead of, hey, those first 2 17s you catch, that's your fish.
Yeah.
So you're not killing all those other ones in the meantime.
Yeah.
But
there's a ton of different scenarios out there, and I just think there's a better way. And I will give credit to some of these captains. It seems like I saw last year in July some of the captains were just going out and targeting white perch, because some people are happy filling up a cooler, whether it's catfish, white perch, it doesn't matter.
Spanish Max.
Yes, which are plentiful. To my knowledge, I'm not a marine biologist by any means. But have you caught Spanish Max in the last couple of years?
I have.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I was out. I guess it was 2 years ago, and I think that was one of the first times Spanish Max had come up in a while. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah, because I was at Pools Island, and I saw a Spanish Max jump out of the water in June, and I looked over at my buddy. I was like, I've never caught a Spanish Max, but that wasn't anything from around here. I'm like, it was either that or a sea trout jumping out of the water. Yeah. And it was 3 days later, Spanish Max are here and plentiful, and everyone was out chasing Spanish Max. But they're a cool fish to catch.
They're fun. They're real fast fish. They good fight, good eating fish too. Yeah, so that
depends on who you ask.
Really? Some people don't like them.
I had a Spanish. I mean, maybe it's just the way I cooked it. A lot of people smoke them, and they're really good smoked.
Yep.
The one I had was kind of like eating a bluefish. It was just super bony and kind of tough. Yeah, I don't know.
I've had pretty good Spanish Mac.
Yeah,
grilled or smoked. Yeah,
I baked mine. It was maybe it was just a bad experience. I've had bad experience with a lot of fish. Like snakehead. Everyone loves snakehead. I'm not a big fan of it, but who knows? I'm not a great cook either.
Well, that could make a difference. But it's also the freshness of a fish too. Like even bluefish. I've had bluefish right out of the when you cook it right away, and it's not great, but it's edible,
palatable.
You don't want to freeze a bluefish and then cook it later for sure. But it's oily and a darker meat fish. But it's. I mean, you're bringing up captains, and it's like anything else, right? There's good and bad and everything. Yeah. There's really good captains out there that are very conservative, trying to save the fishery and are very conscious about that. And then there's bad captains out there that are going to bend rules and break rules and.
Well, DNR did this thing last year, didn't they? And it ended up on the bad side of it. I mean, they caught a bunch of guys out there without licenses and
Yeah.
keeping undersized fish, and that just
No.
that hurts my heart.
It does, and it gives, and the good captains hate that too, because it gives them all a bad name, you
Yeah.
know, and that's terrible. That's not true. There's some great captains out there, you know, that do a great job and that do care. You know, they do care about the fishery and
Yeah.
are really good with people and get people into fishing, and it gives them all a bad name though. Yeah,
Yeah.
when people are out there breaking rules.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, it's just what I've realized in the last couple of years, just fishing with you and some of the good captains that I fish with. There's the Chesapeake Bay has plenty to offer. It's not all rockfish, you know. As long as you're willing to take an hour drive, you can find some really cool species here. And you know, I get calls from my buddy Brad, and he's like, "Hey, this particular fish is in this part of the bay." I'm like, I would have never thought of that ever.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild. You know, with chasing cobia in the bay.
Yeah,
I never thought cobia were in the bay.
hugely growing. Yeah,
Yeah, and,
cobia and reds, right? That's
and it seems like, you know, the redfish population has been managed awesome. They're very plentiful, and I mean, maybe they have a higher or lower mortality rate upon release or something. I don't know.
Well, I think we could learn a lot when you're talking about what we could do different from Florida and the redfish and what happened with redfish in Florida. It's the same thing. They were in trouble and struggling mightily, and they switched to game fish status and ban nets.
Yeah.
And look at it.
What do you mean by ban nets? Like
banned. There are no they had
gill nets.
They banned all nets in Florida. Yeah, you cannot net. There are no gill nets. There aren't any nets. There's no netting in Florida.
Yeah.
So they had some conservation groups really strong.
What about
ones.
like the fish oil nets? Like nothing.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
like
I don't
Omega.
think they do that. Yeah, that's mostly all out of Virginia
Okay.
that they do all that. I don't think they do any of that in Florida. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know they banned nets. There's a big net ban in Florida. So, and how it happened was the conservative groups, some of the fishing conservation groups, bought out all the net licenses and shut it down. And then I guess they learned, like, wow, that worked really well. Look how plentiful the fish are, and came back. And plus, and again, giving reds the game fish status, so they're not getting commercial fish, that it exploded. You know,
Yeah.
they're
Something drastic needs to be done for sure. I mean, we all see it. It's just, you know,
well,
like I,
and you haven't really seen it though.
yeah.
You know, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
you
I wasn't
said
here
you
for the
started
glory
fishing
days.
3 years ago,
Yeah.
so you've only seen it suck. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
you've only seen it be bad. Like, you've done well with what's available to catch now because you've learned and you've put yourself out there with the right people and you put the time in but you know, you fish with me a lot, like right in the fall and stuff, and we do okay, right? We
Yeah.
catch fish, but we work, man. Like the average dude going out that doesn't know what you're not catching a fish out
Yeah,
there.
correct.
You're not going to catch a fish out there. Used to not be that hard. You know,
Yeah.
you in the fall, oh my God, like you would just catch fish till you were tired of catching fish out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you could throw a sassy shad out in a bass boat with a trolling motor and just boom, and just continually slam fish.
Yeah.
It was crazy. You can't do that now.
God,
You got to know you got to know the spots. You got to know the tide and the current be just right. And you got to twitch just right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to put some work in to catch them.
Yeah, I remember going out with you in the fall this year. I mean, you did well. I don't think I caught a fish that day, but you know, you were like, "Yeah, there's this one ledge right here where there's maybe 6 fish that just sit there."
You got to be on them too. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to be. Yeah, exactly. When I'm saying with shad, like, you can be anywhere. No, not rock fishing. Like, you got to be within 10. Like, you got to be right on that spot.
Yeah.
And the conditions got to be right and all that. So it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard.
I like a little bit of a challenge, but not what it is now. It's like
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to put in this much work.
Yeah,
You know, and
it's a
I'm willing
shame.
to put it in. I do. You know, you know me. I'm out there every day.
Yeah.
You know, fighting the good fight out there. But it's you know, and maybe it's some inexperience and some is, or most is, because the fishery sucks now.
Well, that's what it is. And again, you certainly put the time in, and you're with the right people, and
Yeah.
you're learning. You know, and it's not easy anymore.
Yeah. So, do you have plans for big fish this year around here? Cobia, reds? Are you going to try that out at all?
Yeah, definitely. I did a cobia trip last year. I'm going to add and do some more of those this year.
Who'd you go out? Did you go out with Tyler?
I went with, my gosh,
Was it Nick Garrett? I mean, not Nick Garrett, Redbeard.
no.
I I recognized the name when you said it.
Yeah, gosh, who was it? Man, he's a great guy too. It's a
Yeah.
shame I can't think of his name to give him a plug. So it was a friend of. So there's a real big famous boat down there out of Virginia Beach, the Finale.
Yeah.
So it was a buddy of his, 'cause he was all booked up, and the buddy of his who was like the godfather of fish. He's fished down there forever. This guy, he's not real old either. It's not, I don't know,
Yeah.
but he's been doing it. He's lived down there. He's fished his whole time there. Is it Marty? Marty, son. I'll have to look. I have his
I'll say
name.
once you find it,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
put the name on there.
Yeah, super great guy.
Yeah.
He had a trip cancel on him, and the Finale guy called me and said, "Hey, my buddy canceled." So the guy was nice enough to call me back, and I scheduled a trip and ran down with him. And real good guy. The guy knew what he was doing for sure. And of course, we went on a day. I think we caught 4 or 5 cobia that day, but we casted to like 50.
But that's
So
a good day of cobia fishing.
Yeah, we
though.
saw so many cobia. They just wouldn't eat. So we could hear all the other boats and everybody talking. Same thing, like they're seeing so many fish and just couldn't get them to eat. And we right out of the gate, we hooked up like 5 fish really fast.
Yeah.
And
Then it kind of died off.
yeah, and we saw a bunch and just couldn't get them. But it's exciting because you're constantly seeing them.
It's straight work. You know, the trips
It
I've
is.
gone on, I don't go down for one day because I went down 2 years ago and it was cloudy out, and the captain was like, "We'll go, but you know, if we can't see anything, then you're not catching anything."
Right. Yeah, it's
You
so
know?
dependent on that. Got to have that perfect blue, clear
Yeah.
sky, and
Yeah.
I went in August or I think, and you're roasting hot. You know,
Yeah.
it's hot and
Standing on the gunnel, holding off the T-top, looking around,
yeah.
trolling around. But it's so exciting when you finally see that cobia. And it was such a learning curve for me because, our captain just assumed that we watched a bunch of videos, and we did, but I didn't realize how fast it's like cobia cast.
yes,
And then
you got to
gotta
get it
place
right
it perfectly and reel it as fast as you can. And if they're hungry, they're going to eat it. You know, you're not going to sit there and finesse a cobia.
No,
they're either
they're-
hungry or they're not.
We had a bunch of them chase it right to the boat and turn off the boat too
Yeah.
sometimes, and so we had a couple different setups. And the other thing is knowing how to pitch. Normally, we're pitching ounce and a half jig heads on BKDs or whatever we're throwing here. So we're throwing big 3 ounce.
Yeah, which is
those really big jig, and it's a totally different game.
we're not used to that.
No,
we're not used
no,
to
it's a
throwing
different
3
casting
ounces.
method. Yeah, so getting used to that, we practiced a little bit at the dock beforehand and hitting some piers, and we were all experienced fishing guys that were out there too, and it's still.
Oh yeah.
So you had that set up, and then you had live eel set up too, where you could pitch out
Yeah.
sometimes if they would come off the teaser, the jig head, you'd pitch an eel, but yeah, it was fun. Fun.
Have you hit the bull? Have you got bull reds yet?
Nope.
Shoo! Come on,
Nope.
man. You got to get out there for bull
Oh, I
reds.
know. I do. I keep saying it all the time. They happened that day, and we told the captain, hey, if there's a bunch of reds, because they mix in, that same area.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll come up, and he was talking about it, and he got a call, and he was like, hey, there's a bunch of reds, and it was pretty far away, and it was kind of late in the day. He's like, we wouldn't get there in time now. So,
Yeah. Yeah, bull reds. I mean, I love catching cobia. Bull reds are something else. When you get on those schools, and I was blessed enough to get on a couple of those schools last year, where it's like, you're looking in the water and it's like just thousands of these reds. We were in a school so thick that was mixed in with black drum too, which was a wild sight to see. They were so thick, and they weren't even that hungry that day. And we were catching them one after another, but they weren't that hungry. We were casting them out, reeling in scales, red scales. That's how thick they were. It's just dragging over the backs of them. And we actually were able to jig up one of the black drum, which was apparently, I didn't know this, but I think that's rare for them to bite a jig. You're usually on the bottom.
Some kind of crab or something
yeah,
like that.
and black drum, they are ugly fish.
Yeah,
man.
they are. The big
Good-
ugly.
Yeah, good lord. But it looked like I didn't catch one. My buddy didn't. It looked like a good fight. So
Yeah, they're big, and heavy, and strong. But reds, I haven't caught one, but I've been on boats with guys that have. And there's another trip you brought up, Pete. I was on a trip with him a few years ago, and we caught. That's the first time I ever caught a cobia. And we were rock fishing. We told him we kind of went down, and there were certain times of the year when it was August 2 years ago, and because it was specifically going to be a cobia redfish trip. And he's like, hey, it hasn't been good. Like, nobody's catching those. So we were kind of just hanging around, catching some little schoolie rockfish and bluefish and Spanish Max.
Yeah.
And I said, Pete, man, like I can do this at home, right? Like we all three of us on the boat with you, like we're big fishing dudes. We catch rockfish and we catch these all the time.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'd rather strike out swinging.
yes, let's go take the chance. And you know us, like, hey, if we don't catch them, we get it.
Yeah.
But I would rather take the chance. And man, we ran out to a couple spots he had marked, and we caught 2 cobia and a big redfish out there. And he was like, man, he's like, I wouldn't have just done this with anybody, because some people don't understand. You know, they don't. He's like,
Yeah.
but you guys, I knew you would. I'm like, well,
It's just
glad we came.
insane. I mean, you feel the thump on the rockfish. The difference with the reds and the rockfish. The rockfish don't fight half as hard as a red. They're just freight trains. You know, the first one I caught, it was like the captain told me, he's like, I'm going to tell you this right now, and you need to take this to heart. You have no control over this fish right now. And I was like, yeah, no, I think I can pull to the side of the boat. He's like, no, go where that fish is. And it was wild, man. But yeah, I'm obsessed with that now. That's definitely a reason why I bought a towable boat, is to travel and chase
I'm
those.
definitely going to run down there with you and do some
Yeah.
of that redfish.
Heck yeah. Yeah,
The cobia fight like crazy too.
they're very comparable. The difference between the two, from my short experience of 1 year of catching cobia and reds, is cobia dig a lot more towards the bottom, and reds are just circle the boat, just freight train.
And cobia don't give up. Like, so when you got a cobia near the boat and they see that net, like they
Yeah.
just take off
Yeah.
again.
And then they get in the boat, and they're very dangerous fish in the boat.
They've got those sharp spines on the back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they break people's legs, you know, because they can get up to 100 pounds. I mean,
Yeah.
most people don't catch a 100-pound cobia, but it's possible to see that. But yeah, no, they're wild, man. I'll definitely take you down there this year, and you know, I'm super inexperienced. We may not catch anything, but we'll give it a try.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Well, that's the thing about them. You just stumble on them. There's no rhyme or reason to where they're at. You get in the 20-mile radius of them and just hope they come up chasing some bait or something.
It's funny, the area when we caught them with Pete, we went to specific lumps. So we were we were jigging them and
Yeah.
not seeing surface fish. So we jigged those cobia and the red. Like, so we were jigging just like you would jig for a rockfish.
Yeah.
On humps and lumps. You know, I was jigging like a big, you know, BKD, and like that's how we call it.
That's where I caught. Yeah, that's later in the season. I know what area you're talking about. It's probably the same area I caught my 49, but it was the same thing. We were just using a fish finder, you know, or the Humminbird, you know, side scan, and they were on the bottom. He'd say they're back right, and they were on the bottom. I think the cobia come up, like they have to come up to survive. It's something with their swim bladder that pushes them up to the top, but. Yeah, they're so cool, man. I can't wait to get into that this year.
Me too.
So and that's what kind of is the saving grace for me in July. Like, you know, there's other fish to catch. That's what I keep saying. You know, when the rockfish are they're dangerous to catch, or you know, they're gonna die if we catch them, then there's plenty other fish to catch, and to be honest with you, more fun ones.
Yeah.
You know, the cobia and the reds are definitely an obsession. So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, we've been going for a while, right?
I was going to say, yeah, I lose track of time here sometimes.
I know.
So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on here. I'm going to take a picture of your setup there before you go.
Yep.
And yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Yeah, Matt.
Yep.
Anytime.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. Shoot. I go in all different types of directions.
Well, like you said, it's fishing talks.